Coming up on today's program, Texans versus Chargers. We got the injury reports for both teams from Tuesday practice. I'm filming this on, early Wednesday, so don't have all the Wednesday injury reports, but we can read the tea leaves, kind of look at what we have so far. And with these injuries, I have the biggest question mark for both teams, for the Texans and for the Chargers, coming up on today's show. But if you're a Houston Texans fan and you're here, you might be a little superstitious. I'm just a little stitious, not a ton superstitious, but I've done this before and it's worked 100% of the time. So I was like, you know what? Why not pull it out for the playoffs? No, there's nothing to lose. It's win or go home. So if you're a Texans fan, if you want the Texans to win this weekend, I need you to do one thing and one thing only. Like today's video. 1,000 likes equals a win on today's video. If you're like, hey, I don't care about this, and you don't like the video, and the Texans lose this Saturday, hey, just say, you don't want to be the guy who's like, all I had to do was like the video. If I would have just liked that dumb Texans Today video, then the Texans would have win. Don't let that happen. Don't jinx it at all. Go down and hit that thumbs up icon because it works 100% of the time, 99% of the time. So go down and like the video. 1,000 likes on this video. And the Texans are getting a dub on Saturday. So let's break right into the injury reports for both teams. The Texans, these guys were full participants. Good news for the Texans. Nick Broeker, Will Anderson Jr., and this one actually surprised me a little bit. Teagan Quitoriano was a full participant. We haven't seen him in a minute, and that made me question, will Irv Smith still be the tight end 3? Because even though he hasn't caught a pass for the Texans, he's been instrumental with blocking and being a tight end that comes in and is making an impact for this team. I've seen a lot of Irv Smith, especially with the injury to Cade Stover 2 or 3 weeks ago. He had to have that emergency surgery. Irv Smith Jr. stepped in. Is he still the tight end 3? Or if Teagan Quitoriano is good to go, will he step in and be that tight end 3 for this team? Teagan has a lot of familiarity with this offense. So I really am interested to see what the Texans do come Saturday, if it's going to be Teagan or Irv Smith. I mean, not consequential for anything. We're talking about the third tight end. But still, I'm wondering what the Texans, what Bobby Slowick, this coaching staff is going to do in terms of the guys that are going to be on the active roster come Saturday. Now, let's get into some guys who did not fully participate. D'Angelo Ross, Foley Futakasi, Jeff Okudah, Christian Harris. Out of this list, the thing that worries me is we have 2 cornerbacks on this list, D'Angelo Ross and Jeff Okudah, which makes me wonder, who's playing where at corner this weekend? And will we see maybe somebody who the Texans just signed to the practice squad, Anthony Averett, play a little bit? He has a little bit of inside-outside versatility, and I think this is a huge question mark for the Texans. That leads me to the biggest question mark that I have around this Texans team going into this Saturday. Who will Denico Autry play in the slot up against the Chargers? He was asked this at his press conference, and he kind of laughed it off and said, hey, guys, I'm not going to give you my game plan. I'm not going to tell you what we're going to do on defense, which is very smart. I wouldn't want Denico Autry to give anything away before Saturday, but that is the biggest question mark because the Texans, they've played, most of the season with Jalen Petrie, Jimmy Ward, their safeties. They have been the main slot guys, but ever since Jalen Petrie got injured and then Jimmy Ward now out for the year as well, the Texans have kind of been searching for who's going to play in that third corner slot for this team. And it really makes me wonder because if you're looking at the Chargers, their top wide receiver is Ladd McConkey. And he is a slot merchant. He's somebody who they will put in the slot a ton. He is a smaller receiver, 6 foot, 185 pounds, so he loves to work out of that slot position. What are the Texans going to do to counteract that? Because he is the wide receiver 1, the de facto wide receiver 1 for the Chargers. So how are the Texans going to guard that? How are they going to make sure, how are they going to ensue that Ladd McConkey just doesn't, absolutely wreck them this Saturday? I think there's 3 options that the Texans can possibly implement this Saturday. And here are the 3 options. It's either going to be Derek Stingley, Kamari Lassiter, or they're just going to leave Myles Bryant there in the slot. Those are the 3 guys who I think that they'll match up against Ladd McConkey for the most part. I want to hear from you, though, in the comments section. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's video. So if you get hit with the YouTube ad break, perfect timing. Scroll on down and give me your answer. Who is going to go up against Ladd McConkey, or who should guard Ladd McConkey on Saturday? If you think it's Derek Stingley, type DS. Kamari Lassiter, type KL. Or if you think it should be Myles Bryant, type MB. I think they should move Lassiter on the inside. I think if you put Myles Bryant up against Ladd McConkey, you're just asking for failure. And that's why it could be a big moment for an Anthony Averett, a D'Angelo Ross, a Jeff Okudah, somebody else who they want to play on the outside. I talked about earlier this week how if I was the Texans, I would have much rather signed Steven Nelson or Desmond King off of the Ravens or Chiefs practice squads, because both those guys have familiarity, and I feel better about both those guys rather than Myles Bryant at this current moment. And obviously, Steven Nelson really hasn't played this year. Desmond King has been bouncing off and on practice squads. But with the squad we have right now, if the Texans don't add anybody else, if they don't make any more changes, if nothing else happens, I think you go Rook versus Rook. I think you put Kamari Lassiter in the slot up against Ladd McConkey. Give him that challenge. And if I'm looking at Lassiter and I'm trying to tell him what I want him to do this weekend, I don't want to see Ladd McConkey get any free releases. I want to see Kamari Lassiter use that physicality, use that strength that he loves to implement all over the field, especially when he's tackling guys in the open field. I want to see him use that to try to jam Ladd McConkey at the line of scrimmage. Make sure every time he gets off the line, no free releases. Make him feel you every single down if you are guarding him, Kamari Lassiter. That's personally what I would do, because I think Stingley more than capable of taking away Quentin Johnston. And if you have him taking away Quentin Johnston, you have Kamari Lassiter working on Ladd McConkey, then who's the next receiving option for the Chargers? Well, we'll get into that in just a moment. But before we talk about the Chargers, let's finish up on the Texans injury report. Lastly, let's talk about some guys who did not practice on Tuesday. Denico Autry, John Metchie, Shaq Mason, and Jake Hansen. And from these guys, obviously, you want Denico Autry to play. You want another guy on this defensive line, but the Texans' defensive line is pretty stacked, if you ask me, in terms of guys. So that doesn't worry me as much. Shaq Mason, at this point, I don't think he plays, but the Texans, they already have their lineup that they want to use. They put in Juice Scruggs at right guard, Blake Fisher, the rookie, at right tackle, Titus Howard at left guard. The biggest question mark here, though, is with John Metchie, because he's actually played pretty decently for the Texans over the past couple of weeks when he has played. But now, if he's not able to go up against the Los Angeles Chargers, you are really looking for Deontay Johnson to step up. You are really banking that he really shows out and is, somebody who wasn't on the team a couple weeks ago, but really can make an impact for this Texans team for this playoff run. If Metchie's not good to go, you really need Deontay Johnson. So I'm hoping Metchie is able to get back on the field and at least be good to go this Saturday. We'll talk about the Chargers, their injury report, and a guy who could easily be a major impact for the Chargers or the Texans, depending on whether or not he plays. I'll break that down in just a moment, but gotta show some love to the sponsor of today's program in Game Time, my go-to ticketing app, and it should be your go-to ticketing app as well. It's playoff time, baby. Get your tickets and root on your team in the most important games of the season with Game Time. They have all-in pricing, so you can toggle this feature on to make sure you don't get bamboozled by any, last-second tickets or any, last-second fees. Also, you can see the seat view before you even buy the ticket, so you know what you're getting before you buy. And they have the lowest price guarantee, which means if you can find a ticket for the same price for an event in the same row, or if you find a ticket that is a better price in the same row and the same section of an event that you bought a ticket with Game Time, they will credit you 110% of the difference. So if we're looking to maybe go to this AFC wildcard game between the Chargers and Texans, well, there's one place you should look at, and it is the Game Time app. And if you look at this screenshot right here, I have all-in pricing, that feature toggled. I also have the Game Time picks. This basically filters out all the fluff and makes sure you find the best bang for your buck. It shows you the very best deals for whatever event you're trying to go to. So whether it is a playoff game or you just want to see a concert, comedy show, or anything in your area, use the Game Time map. Don't waste time, and make sure you find the best deals for last-second tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Once again, download the Game Time app. Use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time. And now it's game time for the Chargers. Let's look at their injury report going across enemy lines. All these guys were limited on Tuesday. So J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, the two starting running backs for this team, both limited with ankle injuries. Simi Fehoko, the wide receiver, with an elbow. The interior offensive lineman, Zion Johnson, ankle. You have Quentin Johnston with the thigh. Former Texan Denzel Perryman injured with a groin. You have Rashawn Slater, Trey Pipkins, two more offensive linemen with a knee and oblique, and Jasir Taylor with an oblique as well. All those guys limited on Tuesday. But the one guy I'm looking at, and I am laser focused on if I'm the Houston Texans, on whether or not he plays, is Joshua Palmer, the third wide receiver for the Los Angeles Chargers, because they're pretty thin at receiver past their top two guys in Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston. So if Joshua Palmer is not able to go, that could be massive for the Texans and the Chargers. That could change up how this game is played tremendously on both sides of the football. Because if you just look at the top three receivers for LA, you have Ladd McConkey, over 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns on the year. Quentin Johnston has had a pretty good season, over 700 yards. And then that third guy is Joshua Palmer. And if you're looking at receivers for this team, there is a massive, massive drop-off after Joshua Palmer. So if he's not able to go, that means the game plan changes up a little bit on both sides of the football for the Chargers and for the Texans. Because without Palmer, the Chargers lose a key downfield threat, and the Texans can focus more on trying to stop Ladd McConkey and J.K. Dobbins. Those two guys, I believe, become the top two threats for the Houston Texans on defense. You got to key on those two guys if Joshua Palmer's out, because he's somebody who's a long, lanky receiver, can stretch the field, is a really good downfield target, has been with the Chargers for multiple seasons. He's a guy who Justin Herbert trusts. He's been with Justin Herbert from the beginning. So I think he's a guy, if he doesn't play on Saturday, could be a massive game changer for both teams. I mean, for the most part, the Chargers, Justin Herbert, he's had an excellent season. 23 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, the best TD to interception ratio in the NFL this season among quarterbacks. But the Chargers relied a lot towards the end of the season on their defense and a steady run game. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, they ran the ball very well. I mean, even Justin Herbert has been able to run the ball very well for this Chargers team whenever he's needed to evade the rush and pick up some extra yards with his legs. But if you take out Joshua Palmer, then you can focus more on stopping this run game and not worrying as much about getting beat on the back end, because obviously they have Quentin Johnston. But I would say Joshua Palmer might be the best downfield threat that they have on the Los Angeles Chargers right now. So I really believe if the Texans can stop the run this Saturday, they'll put themselves in an amazing position to win this game and shock the NFL and shock the Chargers. No pun intended. But I really do believe whether or not Joshua Palmer plays will massively impact this game, because you look at the Texans' cornerback situation, they're very thin there. So if you take somebody away from the receiving end on the Chargers side, that kind of levels the playing field a little bit more, because you have your starting two outside corners in Derek Stingley between Kamari Lassiter, but that nickel spot, like I said earlier in today's show, is a huge question mark for the Texans. And if Joshua Palmer's not able to go, what I said earlier about Kamari Lassiter, I doubled down on that. If Joshua Palmer's not playing on the outside, they better move either Kamari Lassiter or Derek Stingley on the inside to go up against Ladd McConkey, because at that point, you can have maybe Jeff Okudah, D'Angelo Ross, whoever you want on the outside, going up against DJ Chark or whoever else the Chargers put on the outside there. But I feel way more comfortable if it's them going up against DJ Chark rather than Joshua Palmer. Well, that's all I have for you on today's show, folks. But as I've said all week, I'll be going live this weekend. Texans, Chargers, playoff action, win or go home. It's a home playoff game for the Houston Texans. We've got to show out. We've got to really rep, and we've got to make sure the entire NFL, the entire nation knows H-Town holds it down. So if you're not going to be at the game, make sure you're here with me. I'll be going live an hour before kickoff. Make sure you hit that sub button. And if you made it to the end of the video, drop those H's down in the comment section so I know you're one of the real ones.